All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of Saber Sims DFS office hours. It is Wednesday, March 15th of 2023 here. And you know what Wednesday is? Wednesday is the day that we build golf lineups. So got some golf action coming getting some feedback here. Apologies about that. Not sure what was going on there. Oh, actually, I know what's going on. My bad. Little feedback there. Apologies about that. But we do have a 7-game NBA slate tonight. We also have a 4-game hockey slate. Golf tees off tomorrow. I know that we have CSGO going on. We got League going on. We got tennis going on. So a bunch of DFS action out there. If you're not joined up with us and you have found this show, check us out. We have a no strings attached 7-day free trial down in the with a link in the description below. But if anybody has any questions, now is a great time to get them in. As always, I'm Andrew. I'm one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. You guys have probably been here before, but this is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions that come in live in the YouTube chat. See a couple questions already rolling in, or in the office hours channel in our Discord server. There's also a link to the Discord in the description below. But that being said, going to get the app pulled up here, and we are just going to jump right in. So only a couple questions here in the Discord. So if anybody has any questions, just keep knocking them out here. But first question came in yesterday from Latman7. Question is, has it ever been said how many slate sims in the builder uses on the different levels on the sim diversity slider? I know it's been said many times that Showdown 10 takes a single slate to build each lineup, but what about 9, 8, 7, etc.? So good question here, Latman. I did post a response. I'm just going to read that off here, and then if anybody has any follow-ups, we could talk about it a little further. But I basically said it's a spectrum of the higher the sim diversity, which I'm going to pull up here. The higher the sim diversity, the less sims we are using, the smaller bucket of sims that we're using. And then the lower the sim diversity, the more sims that we're using. And it ends up being a larger bucket here, where at sim diversity 0, what we are doing is we are using the mean score for players across all sims. So that is actually the number that you do see here in the app. So at sim diversity 0, I'm gonna move over to NBA here, but basically at sim diversity 0, we are using 55.71 as Joel Embiid's projection, but anywhere in between there, we are taking buckets of sims, and that number might end up, well, it will be different. He's never gonna have that same number. It's like probably an incredibly rare occurrence, but that is what bucketing does. That is what allows us to take into account these players' range of outcomes by randomly sampling the sim database. But good question there. And then we do not disclose the actual number of sims. We had done that in like a previous version of the builder, where I think this was sim variants. We did that for a little bit, but we have removed that feature. Just something that we do not want to display going forward. Something that we choose to disclose, not to disclose. All right. Next question came in from Chase. This is a good one, Chase. I hope you got my wheels turning with this one. So Chase said, so in DFS, since variance can take a large sample size until you actually can realize your edge, how can you make changes to your process and truly know if it's a positive change? So Chase, this is a phenomenal question. It is probably one of the hardest things to answer in DFS if you're not like a programmer or have strong programming background where you can run contest simulations and do back testing yourself. So it ends up being pretty hard to answer most of the time. I think that some things that people probably like you and I could do, where I'm not a programmer, can do is look at something like top 1% equity and track that over a long period of time. I think Roto Tracker does a great job of doing that. If you are, if you have the Roto Tracker subscription, like in your bankroll, if that's something that you can afford to do, that's great. I've also done it in Excel over a period of time, and like literally, you write down the contest you're playing, you write down your number of entries, the number of entries in the contest, what the top 1% score is, and then the next day you go back and you see how many of your lineups finished above that score, right? Or in the top 1% of the contest, right? And then you do this tracking thing every single day. So it's something I did for a long time, but I ultimately just end up using Roto Tracker for it now. So I think that's like a good way to do it if you're looking for like a little bit more of a quicker turnaround there. I think, doing some like 1% equity tracking is fine. So I think that, ultimately it will take like a long time for you to like truly know, but I think you can get like some ideas within a couple of weeks. If you're just like breaking every slate for like 3 weeks straight, like, yeah, it might be variance, but you might also want to look into seeing what you're doing wrong. And I think our YouTube video has a ton of resources, sport specific, to help out with that. But I think that top 1% equity will probably be your best friend along that journey, unless you have a strong programming background where you can run contest sims and do back testing on your own. All right. Hopping over to the YouTube chat. And Hiker Willie said, hey, Andrew, in NHL, is there a way to set a build rule to allow only D versus opposing goalies and not C's or wings? Interesting. Okay, let's go over to NHL here. So I know that we have allow skaters versus opposing goalie. We have that set to off by default. So I'm pretty sure that you might want to look into turning that rule on, right? Because then that will allow D's versus opposing goalies. And then basically you would now need to turn off like centers or wings versus opposing goalies here. But I'm trying to see if there's like a way we could do this. I might have to dip in to my NHL resources here on the team to figure this one out, Hiker Billy. So let me not spend too much time on this since I'm not like an expert on it. And instead, let me just make a note for myself to bring this up, and I can circle back on this one tomorrow for you. So I will dip into my resources here, and i.e. Scott, and I'll see if Scott can help me out here. So Hiker Billy, NHL question. All right, next question. Franklin said, do the Sims account for the weather in PGA? So good question. We do not account for weather splits per se, but we do account for like scoring environment, I think is like the right word. So if it's like gonna be like really terrible weather and we are expecting scoring to be like lower than on average, yes, we do capture weather in like that way, but we do not account for like splits, like weather splits, or like, hey, weather's going to be bad in the morning but then better in the afternoon. And then so like the PM AM wave is like kind of the play. They might have they might shoot on average like 2 strokes better than the AM PM wave. So like we are not going to capture that. What I would suggest doing is using the tee times column here in the app, which you should be able to see, and setting some rules based on it. Maybe you come into the lineup rules here, and then you go to add new rule, and then you do some type of group automatic rule where you're saying, okay, the AM PM wave has better weather split, so I'm going to make sure I'm using at least 4 players. And then I'm going to add a requirement, and I'm going to say, tee time after, and then you could just sort this and then see where the split is. So then I would say something like after 10 a.m. here, after 10:00 a.m. And then, I'm saying at least 4, so it could be more, but at least that you're favoring one split as opposed to the other. Or actually, I said the AM PM, so it actually be before 10 a.m. here. So before 10 a.m., and then you would just save that rule, and then it will grab all the players based on the tee time here, and then create one big group, which you can see if you save it as a manual rule. So I'm going to say this is manual. and there are 69 golfers that are in the AM wave, and it will grab all of them and then put them in a group for you and say use at least 4. So that's how I would handle like strong weather splits. So we do, understand the scoring environment very well, but we do not account for individual golfer tee time weather splits, which is why one big reason why we wanted to add tee times in the app so users could take advantage of that feature. But good clarification question, Franklin. I think that will, that's a question that like serves the vast community here. I could really said maybe a tick box for each could be added and activated on the builder when skaters versus opposing goalies is allowed. Thanks. Yeah, I could definitely take that back as a feature request here. I think that would be like probably the best way to do it. I know right now we just have like the utility column one, but I think that you are onto something there, and that might be basically like the easiest way to like fix that. So Hike, really good feature request there. I have that noted along with your original question. I'm gonna ask and see if we could do anything, any workarounds in the meantime. The Goon said for the 222 contest on FanDuel with 25 max entry, which GPP, I'm assuming this is going to say like contest settings. It doesn't look like the Goon finished this question here, but let's go over to NBA. Let's talk about it. What I would do, I would treat this closer to like a 20 max. It is really closer to like a 20 max than 150 max here. So like I would not go up in settings. You can see that the only thing that changes is the sim diversity ticks up one slider correlation, doesn't move at all here. So I think it's completely fine to build it either way here. The other thing is that, now with the way that we are grading lineups in SaberSim 2.0, they will be graded slightly differently. I think that, the 150 max settings are going to like be a little more geared toward upside here. So we could check that. We can go into the large slate, and then we can actually no. So this is based on contest size, not on entry limit. So just one important distinction there. So the Saber Score 2.0 is going to look at how many games are on the slate, and then we are using anything under 5 games is small slate, and then anything over six games or over is large slate. And then it is mostly just looking at this entrance tab. So I think the entrance tab is like probably really important now with the way that Saber Score 2.0 works. So if you set it to 10 to 50K, like that is what it is going to default to. If you set it to 50K, that is what the lineup sorting Saber Score 2.0 version is going to default to. So just make sure that, you're making sure that you're putting that in the build setting, or you are revisiting it in the post build to make sure that you are setting with the right version. But it looks like, this entry limit is really only changing the sliders here, and not a big difference between 20 or 150. But for the $2.22, I would lean toward the 20 max settings. All right. Franklin McBride said, in Showdown contests, when you have a sim duped more than 5 times, is it still good to use that lineup or only target the ones that are 3 or less? Okay, so this is a good question, and I do want to make a distinction here. So let's go to like NBA Showdown and let's talk about this. So good question, Franklin. I'm glad that you brought this up. We have added a new summary statistic under our Showdown lineups called Sim Optimals, and what Sim Optimals is basically doing is that when we run this 500 lineup build for our showdowns, we are running it at Sim Diversity 10. So we are taking a single instance of the game playing, building the optimal lineup, and then doing that for 500 unique lineups. But what can happen along the way is that specific construction can show up as optimal more than one time. So we can't put the same lineup in your pool more than one time. So what we do is we tally that number here under this Sim Optimal summary statistic, and then we use that as an input to our single game Saber Score formula here, which you can see. And we are weighting Sim Optimals very, very strongly in this formula. So you are going to see like the highest Sim Optimals, usually near the top of your pool here. That is not to say that because they are duped in the sim database that they are more likely to be duped in your contests, right? I do want to make that like very clear distinction. Just because that lineup came up more than once in our pool of lineups that we pulled from here from the sim database does not mean that it's more likely to be duped. And I think that if you're interested in knowing, what the uh, estimated duplication rate is, I think that geomean is a great way to figure that out here. So what I do is, because I'm on the pro plan, I have the ability to create a summary statistic here to actually show what the geomean value of each lineup is. And then from there, that can help me determine how likely that lineup is to be duplicated in my contest, right? So then the way that I do that is just gonna pull up my screen here. So the way that I do that is I do the geomean formula. So let's say that I want no more than 5,000 dupes and my contest has 10,000 people. So I'm gonna do 5 divided by 10,000 to the power of 1 divided by 6, where 6 is the number of players in a lineup. And then that geomean is 28.17 effectively here. So this top lineup, this 5 sim optimal lineup with a geomean of 27 is projected to be under 5 dupes if there are 10,000 people in this contest. I think this is a great lineup for just to start, right? It's going to be less than this number effectively here. And, compare that to the number 2 lineup in our pool here with the same sim optimals, but a much higher geomean, right? So like it's this value that is going to more likely reflect the times that a lineup is duplicated. And if you're not on the pro plan, that is okay. I would do this calculation ahead of time and set this number. I usually set it to something like 20. I do the calculation with like a 20, set it as like a guardrail. That way I don't get too off of the wall lineups to start with. And then I would set it up as a lineup rule under aggregate. You could do my own geomean and then no more than, and then you put in the number, and then that will take into geomean ahead of time. So there are more than one way to do it. I think that the perks of being on the pro plan and having the ability to add it as a summary statistic and then filter out lineups that are above that value that we calculate after the fact does help maintain some sim integrity and not affect the sims so much. So like that is one of the great perks of being on the pro plan and being able to do it that way. But doing it in the home screen does work just fine and is also a good tool. So just to answer your question, in a showdown contest, when you have a sim dupe more than 5 times, is it still good to use that lineup or only target the ones that are 3 or less? So it is going to be really hard to like find all unique lineups. I think that if you are shooting for something, under 10 dupes, under 5 dupes, and you are consistently getting like that actual amount of dupes in the lineups that you submit into your contest, I think you're doing something right. There is something to be said about, sometimes there is a reason nobody is playing a certain lineup, and that is because the win probability of that lineup is actually really, really low, and it would take you even longer to realize that, if it's unique. So I think that, when you're sharing lineups with a few people, that is probably because that is like one, more likely to win. And then 2, also, you're more likely to retain more of your share when you do win. So I think that, shooting for like under 5 dupes is totally fine. Don't think there's something different between shooting for like under 5 or under 3. And, if you're interested in like figuring out, you have questions about your showdown process, this is something I did. And, I frankly, like I've said earlier, I'm not a programmer. I don't, have strong back testing background or anything like that. But, if you go to somewhere like Results DB, and we could actually pull this up here because I have my screen shared. So this is Results DB. It's a free roto grinders tool where you can go back into any past slate and then see what it looks like. So they only have the classic slates for NBA, but they do usually have like NFL Showdown. And what you can do, it looks like this is the Super Bowl here. And let's see if I had any entries here. I think I did into the big one here. I probably had some tickets here. So I'll just like show you guys. This is like something that I would do during NFL season here. So let me see if I'm in here. This might be like a little old, so might be a little slow. Okay, so I had 20 lineups in the Super Bowl main GPP showdown, right? So like what I would like to do is come in here and see how many dupes do I have? Who am I duping with? I think that really matters. You know, if you're consistently under like 5 dupes with like top players, I think you're doing something right. And you know, I'm open to criticism or critiques on that. But interestingly enough, my highest scoring lineup was unique here. So like I think that's like a win in and of itself. Pretty interesting lineup here. Had Devontae Smith captain with his QB, Travis Kelsey run back, but this wasn't dupe somehow. So like this is like a pretty good lineup. Probably gonna be pretty proud of that one. But I would just come in here, you know, do this exact exercise, search your name, search the contest, and then go over to lineups. And then you could scroll down here and then see who you are duping with, right? So like under six dupes, 2 dupes, unique. I think I was like really unique on this one. I was like really aggressive with salary here. But then okay, so like this is one here. It's like, okay, I have 11 dupes in this lineup, right? But who am I duping with? Whistles Go Woo, JDS Dog, somebody in the community who's like really good. Like those are you know 2 names I'm happy to dupe with, right? So even though 11 dupes, you know, okay, like don't think that's the worst lineup. There, 17 dupes here. Chipotle Addict, like another big name. Shady Advice, Big T, right? Like these are all like you know top players. And you know, 17 dupes isn't great, but this was like also a huge contest, 470,000 entrants. So ultimately, I think that you know my lineups came out pretty well for this contest, doing this exercise here. But I think this is something that anybody could do, right? If you have the ability to like go in and see the contest that you're playing, this $3.20 max, I think a lot of players in the community are probably playing that one. And you know, I would also you know, if you're interested in doing this type of research, prioritize that contest, right? Make sure you get that $60 in the $3.20 max so you can come back and look at these things, right? So I think that, you know, that's a good exercise to do. But frankly, I think for a lot of us who don't have a strong programming background, this is one way to do it. You know, under 3 dupes, I got Chipotle in there. Great. You know what I mean? So just some food for thought, just some ways to analyze your process without having a strong programming background, but just wanted to throw that out there for you guys. All right. Getting back to SaberSim here, just swapping back over. And next question from Chase said, when using mini uniques, the higher you use, the deeper into the pool you go. At what point are you either too deep into the pool or is the lowest lineup too low of a Saber score? Okay, this is a really good question, Chase. Something that, you know, I think people handle differently. And I think that it is really like a player by player basis. So I'll tell you how I handle it. And then I'll tell you how I have heard of the ways that other users on the team handle it. And then we can kind of go from there. But it kind of comes down to how much work you want to do in the home screen. And for myself, right? I am somebody who likes to really value Saber score or whatever sorting method I'm using. And I do think it's important to play lineups like toward the top, but I also think diversity is important too, right? I'm not discounting diversity in any way there. Being able to smooth out your variance over time really does help your bankroll and help the swings a lot. So right here, something that I tried to do is get to about half of my lineup diverse. You know, whether that be 3, 4, 5, like somewhere in that range. So I'll usually just start with like half and then see how far down I'm going, right? So I'm at 4 mini uniques. I'm at lineup 154 out of 626. That's way above half. I think that's great. So maybe I'll try 5. And then at 5, I'm pushing 400. But something that like I always kind of look at is, you know, how many of those bottom lineups am I playing? So frankly, I would be comfortable with 5 here. I think 5 is fine. But when your rank lineups is 399, 398, 395, and then it jumps to 353, which is why I'm okay playing it. But say this is 393, 392, like you're only getting to those lineups because of min uniques. So min uniques is making you kind of play those lineups. If you were to dial this back to 4, automatically you're back into the top half of the pool here, and then you're playing 154, 152, but then it jumps to 153. So that's only like 2 lineups, but then you're still in like the top 50% of your pool. So that's how I like to play. I like to value saber score, and I like to balance it with min uniques. There are other users on the team, and I think it's also sport specific. But Scott has talked about what he refers to as like militant diversity, where he is trying to max out min uniques on any given night. But he plays primarily NHL, and NHL is like super variant. There are a lot of players in the player pool, a lot of viable lineups on a night to night basis. But he's also somebody who's making a lot of projection adjustments and a lot of adjustments based on his, from years of playing NHL. So I'm not doing so much in the home screen. I don't really use many filters. I use like a guardrail filter of about 7 so I don't have to see guys with 0 or like less than 5 minutes in my pool when I'm scrolling. But that's the way he likes to do it, right? And then I've talked to Jordan, and Jordan is somebody who plays like every slate, every showdown, every classic slate, every showdown slate when he does play. So his time is like kind of spread thin. So he is mostly taking an approach of like, I want to get spread out and get the wins where I can. And I feel like SaberSim is so strong that if I were to just get all of this action down, I could do good over a long period of time, right? He's not really trying to be super exploitative in that way. He is more trying to spread out his action. So it really comes down to like the type of player you are. I'm not like Jordan. I like to do different things. I like to be a little more aggressive, which is why I don't like to get so diverse. So I could still take some stands, but there definitely is it is important to think about how you want to approach it and make that a conscious decision of what your approach is going to be. So I would encourage you to reflect on that a little bit. But good question, Chase. All right, 2G2 Great. This is our last question in the YouTube chat, everybody. 2G2 Great said, what is the best slider settings to use since we don't have the ownership fade anymore? Also, to get more players in your lineup, is it best to boost up all the studs and value players' projections? So good question here. So ownership is now being taken into account in the post build based on the lineup sorting method you're using. You can see this if you hover over, you can do this 2 ways. If you hover over the summary statistic, it will show the formula. So in this example, it is showing some projection plus 0.1 times percentile 95th plus negative 0.3 times average adjusted owned here. So we are taking into ownership into account with this adjusted own calculation as part of our formula. And then that formula can change. You could also see these eye icons next to any single saber score. And then you can click on that and it will pop up the formula. So at a large slate, 50K plus, it's minus 0.4 or negative 0.4 times average adjusted own, as opposed to the 10 to 50K, which was negative 0.3 times average adjusted own. So we are valuing the rate of ownership at different levels in different Saber Score 2.0 metrics is what I really wanted to point out. So ownership is still being taken into account. If you want more ownership taken into account, I would look at these formulas and then see which ones have the highest average adjusted own. And that's usually going to be the one with the biggest contest size. So maybe you're at like large slate 1K to 10K, but you want more ownership taken into account. I would just bump up I would just change the Saber Score metric to the large slate 50K, where ownership is going to be a bigger factor overall. So that is how I would increase the amount of ownership that I'm including in my process. And then second question here was also, to get more players in your lineups, is it best to boost up all the studs and value player projections? So frankly, I think that would probably condense your player pool, because if you just say the value plays are all so good and you also boost the studs, you're going to get like a bunch of like studs and duds kind of lineup where you're getting these like really high salary guys with these really high value guys as well. And then you're just going to get a lot of combinations of those players. I think the best way to increase the number of players that you are seeing in your all player pool here is probably to increase min uniques. So at 5 min uniques, we have 47 players in our player pool. At 4 min uniques, we have 39 players in like our lineup, effective lineup player pool. And then at 1 min unique, we have 28 players. So from min unique 1, we have 28 players to min unique 5, which we said we'd be okay playing. We have 47 players, which is, not quite double, but getting close to that, right? So I think that is the best way to increase the amount of players that you have exposure to across your lineup set, is to increase that number. But really good question there. All right, that is our last question at the moment. I'm going to hang around a little bit longer here and wait to see if any more questions roll in. But in the meantime, I am going to pull up the NBA injury report. We can take a look at this while we wait for any questions to roll in. So if anybody has any questions, now is a great time to get them in. But looking at the NBA injury report here, let's see what we got. Looks like some news just came out here. 2G2 Great said, thanks, man. Yep, dude, happy to help. Thank you for, joining in live, asking questions. You guys who all join in live and ask questions are who keep the show going for everybody. So thank you. But all right, it is a 7:30 Eastern lock today. This is in Central Time here. So a little bit like lock is a half hour later than usual there. Kyle Lowry news. This should be out before lock here. And then we will see what happens. Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid being questionable is actually really interesting. I can only imagine at this point in the season, what the chances are of them both getting ruled out. And then, at that point, who are we left with, right? Another great free resource similar to the results DB that we talked about. ETR has these NBA depth charts that are free. It's a free resource. And you could come into this sheet, click this drop down, and then see, who is available here. So it's Gobert, Naz Reid, Luka Garza is the third listed center on the slate here. So if I go over to Minnesota, I just want to confirm that. So Gobert, Naz, and okay, so it might be Nathan Knight or Luka Garza. I would probably do a little more research to just kind of be prepared to see what worst case scenario is. But Garza is a little higher salary, so that leads me to believe that he would be up first ahead of Nathan Knight there. But should be an interesting thing to keep your eye on with the Minnesota centers here. Scrolling down, Alex Caruso, not super important to me. Sengun, he got ruled out last game, and I would be interested to see how they effectively played without him. So I think using popcorn machine here is probably a good option here. So you can see who they started. So Tari Eason started. Wow, played 35 minutes. Didn't play well, but still played a lot of minutes there. So I think that's worth noting there, just the incredible usage there, or the large amount of minutes that he ended up playing. He is priced up pretty high. I did not want to see a 5,300 price tag on him, but he has played a lot recently. So that's interesting. It looks like they ultimately just kind of played smaller. Garuba barely played here, and he's their next center, and we can check that right over here on this depth chart. And then it's Sengun and then Garuba, but Garuba didn't really play. And it's funny here, they make comments he really needs Jabari to play some 5 to get loose. So it looks like, they kind of split these duties. Jabari probably did play the 5, and then Tari Eason did probably play the 4 here. So especially with them both playing on the court at the same time. So I think those minutes are pretty interesting. I would keep my eye on if Sengun gets ruled out, what do Tari Eason's minutes come in at, right? And do we agree with that? So definitely something to keep your eye on here. So a lot of uncertainty at center today. It looks like Tim Hardaway Jr. questionable. That's really important. That opens up the door for guys like Josh Green and it's Jaden Hardy here. So he played like a ton last game when Hardaway was out. But then, Hardaway was like a huge value play, I think, like last Saturday when Irving was ruled out last minute. So should be some value here on Dallas if, Irving is doubtful. And then we'll see what happens with Hardaway and with Wood here. I don't think the Malachi Branham news is super important. So a lot of uncertainty at center, and then see what happens with Dallas. As far as out players, Donovan Mitchell is back today, so that is a boost to Cleveland there. And Jared Allen was already out, so like not super, not something I'm like closely watching there. Anthony Davis out today. That'll be a big one. Should be a Lakers value slate with him out. Luka's been out. Kyrie's been out. And then nothing really new down here that I would say. Keldon Johnson back, Trey Jones back, kind of make up for some of these other Spurs guys being out. So I'd say, Lakers, Minnesota, Houston, Dallas, some places that you might want to keep your eyes on throughout the day. Make sure that you are thinking about this news as you're building your lineup. If the news hasn't come out, possibly an opportunity to do some late swap optimization for these scenarios, and take on like some more advanced lineup traits in trying to save some salary and lineup positions along the way. But those are the places that I would be spending my time on today as I build my lineup. So I just want to give you guys some ideas headed into the slate. But all right, everybody, no more questions. So we will be right back here tomorrow, Thursday, for our next show, 2 p.m. Eastern. So until then, good luck in all of your lineup building. If you guys have questions throughout the day that pop in your head, throw them in the office hours channel, let them sit there. I do my best to get you guys an answer right away in case, that's important to whatever slate lock is coming up for you. But then we will just circle back to it on the next show for everybody to hear. So until then, good luck in your contest. Take care, and I will see you. Bye.